This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Friend Chanukah, Rabbi Glatstein. Thank you everyone for coming. We're going to learn a very important Chiddush, and I actually heard somebody say it over maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and they had a question on it, and I'm going to try to explain to you why I don't think it's a question. Okay, everybody's familiar with the Gemara in Shabbos on Chaf Aleph on the days that talks about the story of Chanukah. They didn't have enough oil, they went into the Heichal, and they only found one jug. Lo and behold, it lasted for 8 nights. Yeah, everybody knows. And then the Gemara says the next year, L'shana Acheres, the next year, Kavum v'asam Yomim Tovim b'Halal v'Hoida. They established Yom Tif to say Halal. Halal, we know, Pshutei K'mashmai. Halal is to say Halal. And Hoida, Rashi says, means to say Al Anisim. There's something obviously missing from the Gemara. There's something conspicuously absent from the Gemara. If I were to ask you, what is the most known mitzvah on Chanukah, what would you say? Everybody knows.
Halal.
Lighting the candles, right? Hadlakas HaMenorah. Not lakas. Hadlakas HaMenorah. Hadlakas HaMenorah. Why does the Gemara make no mention that Chanukah was established to light the menorah? What happened? The most obvious mitzvah, the most important mitzvah, is missing from the Gemara. The Gemara just mentions Halal, and according to Rashi, Al Anisim. Very strange. Also, if you look in the Al Anisim, V'achar kein ba'uva necha, right? Why don't we say V'kavu shmoinas mechanukah lahoidos lahalal ulahadlik neiros? What happened to lighting the menorah? The most important mitzvah is not mentioned in the Gemara, is not mentioned in Al Anisim. Let's look in the Rambam. The Rambam says in Hilchos Chanukah, Parak Gimel Halacha Gimel, Umibnei Zeh, because of the miracle, Hiskinu Chachamim Shaboisei Hadar, the sages of that generation enacted, Sheyu Shmoinas Hayamim Ha'elu, that these 8 days, Shetchilasan, that begin Milal Chamish V'Esrim B'Kislev, on the 25th of Kislev. What are the days of Chanukah? Look carefully at the words of the Rambam. Yemei Simcha, they're days of happiness, which itself is a big chiddush that the Rambam learns. There's a mitzvah of Simcha on Chanukah. Many Rishayim don't say a word that there's a mitzvah of Simcha on Chanukah. How do you fulfill? Nobody says you have to eat meat on Chanukah. What does the Rambam even mean that the days of Chanukah are Simcha? The Rambam says V'halel, and then he says Umadlikin bohen neiros. That's a very unusual expression. The Rambam doesn't say Yemei Simcha, Yemei Halel, Lihadlik neiros. He should say Ulahadlik neiros. What does it mean Umadlikin neiros? You know what the words Umadlikin neiros means? Yeah. People light them. Meaning you don't have to, but people do it. The words, right, if I say Umadlikin neiros, and they light candles, and you light candles, that means that's just what people do, but the Rambam's not saying we're obligated to do it.
Why not? It's part of the obligation.
Yeah, but the Rambam doesn't say it b'lashon tzivos. He says they're Yemei Simcha, Yemei Halel. No, he should say, if it's a requirement, it should say these are days ulehadlik neiros, and to light. In other words, these are days that you need to light. The words umadlikin is just a comment on what people do, but he doesn't say that this is something we have to do.
No, he says.
And in fact, at the end of the piece, he says, these days are called Chanukah. You're not allowed to eulogize. You're not allowed to fast. And then he says, "V'hadlakas haneros behen," lighting candles. Mitzvah midivrei seifrim is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, kekriyas hamegillah, like reading the Megillah. The Rambam ends off the piece that say that lighting candles is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, like reading the Megillah. Why doesn't the Rambam say, and saying Hallel is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan like reading the Megillah, and having Simcha is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan like reading the Megillah? For some reason, in the beginning, the Rambam just says, not that you have to light candles, just people do light candles. And at the end of the piece, he says, lighting candles is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan like reading the Megillah. He doesn't say all the other mitzvahs of the day are mitzvahs d'Rabbanan like reading the Megillah, like Hallel is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan like reading the Megillah. Why does the Rambam only focus in the end about lighting the candles? Okay? This is the question of Rabbi Yehoshua Mikutna. Rabbi Yehoshua Mikutna. You ever hear Rabbi Yehoshua Mikutna? Yehoshua Mikutna was one of the Gedolei Hadar in the times of the Beis Halevi. And Rabbi Shmuel Lakuna lived from 1831 to 1893. My great-great-grandfather, my father's mother's father, by the name of Pesach Moshe Goldman, he was a big Rav. He helped publish Yeshua's Malkoi in the 19th century. And he was a Talmud of Rabbi Shmuel Lakuna. He asked these questions. Number one, why does the Gemara not mention the mitzvah of lighting the menorah? We added on our own, why don't we mention in the Al Hanisim? Why does the Rambam say, Umadlikin bahen haneros? People light. The Rambam should say you have to light. Why does the Rambam only say that lighting the menorah is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan like Kriyas HaMegillah? Why not Hallel is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan like lighting the Megillah? And finally, I'm not sure you're going to like the question, but you think about it, it's a solid question. Mishnah Berurah brings down in Siman Tafresh Ayin Gimel Sivkatan Chavches, look at number 4. Kasvu Hasfarim, the books write, Shetoiv, it's a good thing, Kol Echad, Sheyatriach Lasos Loi Menorah Yafa, Lefi Koichai, that you should have a beautiful menorah.
Can you consider that as myself?
V'chein haneros yaseh yafe, and so too, the candles should be beautiful.
According to that, can you consider myself?
No.
Why not?
Because you can't use meiser for performance of mitzvahs.
Yeah, but you have something simple, then you want to do it Mahadir.
No, you can't use meiser for the mitzvah. It's separate cheshbon. But the Mishnah Berurah brings down that a person should try to have a nice menorah. Yeah? So it's down to us, of course, yeah, it's a nice thing to do, have a nice menorah. Really? Why? Why should you have a nice menorah? Does anybody say you should have a nice doorpost? Try to have a nice doorpost so that when you put up your mezuzah, it's nice, you know?
Nice little nice one.
You know?
But it's like having a nice mezuzah case.
Yeah, because the mezuzah case, in cases, the mezuzah itself.
Yeah, so
But the candle, so have a nice candle. No, the candle's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is lighting the candle. So why should you have a nice... There's no mitzvah to have a nice talis bag. There's no mitzvah to have a nice lulav. There's no such thing. You want to do it's a nice thing, it's not brought down the halacha. Why should you have a nice menorah? For what?
After Chanukah, the price of the Chanukah are going to go down.
Good.
It's considered that it's also you buy something in a good price. It's considered.
No, there's no mitzvah to get ripped off. That's not part of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to have a nice. No mitzvah to spend more money to go to the store. The one thing is that there's no mitzvah to go to the store the day before Chanukah and buy the menorah. That's Yeah, sure. You buy the menorah the day after Chanukah for next year, right? But my question is, the mitzvah of Hiddur mitzvah is to beautify the item of the mitzvah itself. Have a nice esrog, have a nice lulav, have a nice talis. But nobody says you have to have a nice bag. It's a nice thing, but why buy the menorah? Why should you have a nice menorah? For what? The mitzvah is not the menorah, the mitzvah is the candle, the mitzvah is the wick, the mitzvah is the light.
You can even put a can of oil and light it.
Oh, well, it happens to be that the Chesed Avram, who's the grandfather of Chida, writes a big Chiddush, and the Avnei Nezer Paskins like it in Siman Tav Kuf. And that is that if you take 8 candles, and if you have a candle and you sort of melt the bottom, you could just put it on the table, you're not Yotzei. You're not Yotzei. That you need a Kli. It's a Chiddush. Mishnah Berurah doesn't bring it down. It's not brought down. The Avnei Nezer supports it, but he holds you need a Kli. But now we're learning, not only do you need a Kli, it should be a nice Kli. What does that be a nice Kli for? You want to say, what?
What's the reason for needing a Kli?
Okay.
You can differentiate the two different...
Okay, you could add that to the list. Why do you need a Kli? Why do you need a Kli?
So now why you need a Kli? Now why?
And now not only do you need a Kli, it has to be a nice Kli. It has to cost you money. It has to be Hiddur Kli. Not only do you need a Kli, you need a Hiddur Kli, yeah? So Rabbi Shua Mikudna offers the following Chiddush. And this is a very interesting Chiddush, and a very meaningful one, and should really enhance and elevate the mitzvah of Hadlakas Ner Menorah. On Wednesday morning, which is the last morning of Chanukah, we lane the end of the Nesiim, the end of Parshas Nasai, and then we go into Behaloischa. Right? It's one of the only lanings we're laning from 2 Parshias. We go the end of one Parsha, the beginning of the next. And Rashi asks, what's the connection between the end of Nasai, which talks about the offerings of the Nesiim, to the beginning of Behaloischa, which talks about the lighting of the Menorah? Yeah? Says Rashi, from the words of Chazal, that when all the Nesiim, when the the 12 princes of the 12 tribes brought their karbanos to inaugurate the Mizbeach, there was somebody who felt very bad.
Levin.
Aaron HaKohen. Right? And Aaron HaKohen felt bad that he did not have a share in inaugurating the Mizbeach, right? Reuven, Shimon, Yehuda, Yisachar, everybody had a share, and Aaron HaKohen was not inaugurating the Mizbeach. So Hashem said, don't worry, you have something better. What do you have better? You light the Menorah. So ask the Ramban, why is the Menorah a consolation for Aaron? Why did Hashem say, don't worry, you light the Ketores in the morning and the night, like the Pasuk says, Yasimu Ketar Be'apecha. You do the Avodah on Yom Kippur, which only Aaron could do. You enter the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There are a lot of ways that God could have told Aaron, even though you don't have this, you have this, you have Minchas Chavitin. There are many, many things that only the Kohen Gadol could do. Why, of all things, did Hashem choose to console Aaron with the lighting of the Menorah? The lighting of the Menorah is not the most important thing. By the way, some people hold that you don't even need a Kohen Gadol to light the Menorah. And you don't need a Kohen Gadol. Anyone can light the Menorah. Right? I'm learning with my son, Yuma. Kol Sheves Yamim, all 7 days. Right? The Kohen Gadol does the Menorah. But the rest of the year, the Kohen Gadol doesn't have to do the Menorah. Yeah? So why are we consoling Aaron with the Menorah? So the Ramban says that when the 12 Shvatim brought their karbanos, in effect what they were doing was, they were inaugurating the Mizbeach. So Aaron HaKohen wanted to be someone to inaugurate something, to initiate something, to have a Chanukah. Chanukah means inauguration. So therefore, Hashem said, even though you're not part of this Chanukah, this inauguration, you're going to be part of a different inauguration. What inauguration is that?
Chanukah.
Chanukah, the Yom Tov, the miracle of Chanukah, that your descendants, the Chashmonaim, are going to light the Menorah in the middle of the second Beis HaMikdash, and they're going to inaugurate the second Beis HaMikdash through the lighting of the Menorah, through the miracle of Chanukah.
And also he's saying that it's going to be like continuous.
Says the Ramban, why did Aaron HaKohen, why was he consoled with this mitzvah more than any other mitzvah? Because every other mitzvah, every other avodah in the Beis HaMikdash ceased. It stopped when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. The lighting of the menorah was the only avodah in the Beis HaMikdash that never ceased. How did it never cease? Because when we light today, we're continuing the avodah of the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, the consolation to Aaron was that everybody else is just doing a one-time avodah, but you have the mitzvah of hadlakas ner menorah, and that hadlakas ha-menorah continues today, even begalus. In other words, when we light our menorah in the window, don't just think, oh, this is a new mitzvah that it was enacted by the Chachmei Yisrael. No, what they did was they said that even though we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, and we don't go to the Har HaBayis, and we don't go to the Temple Mount, and we can't do any avodah. There's one avodah you could still do. It doesn't have to be on the Har HaBayis. It doesn't have to be in Yerushalayim. It doesn't even have to be in Eretz Yisrael. You could even do it in Queens. What avodah is that? That's the avodah of hadlakas ha-menorah. In other words, your menorah is taking the place, in effect, is a replacement for the hadlakas ha-menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. So that's a beautiful idea. The fact that when I light my menorah in my house, I'm basically transporting the avodah of the Beis HaMikdash into my house. Says Rabbi Yehoshua Melakotna, a beautiful idea. If lighting the menorah of the mitzvah of hadlakas ha-menorah and Chanukah is a replacement for lighting the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, then it's very reasonable to assume that when the Beis HaMikdash was standing during the second Beis HaMikdash, Chazal never said you have to light a menorah on Chanukah. Why in the world would you have to light a menorah on Chanukah? If the whole purpose of lighting the menorah is, it's a replacement for the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. So if you actually have the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, there's no purpose in lighting the menorah in your house. In other words, according to this idea, that lighting the menorah on Chanukah is a replacement, is a consolation. Aaron, look, there's one avodah that's still being done for all times. Well, if you were actually lighting it in the Beis HaMikdash, there would be no need to light it in your house. And therefore, Rabbi Yehoshua Melakotna posits that when the Beis HaMikdash stood, the Chachamim were not mesakein a mitzvah of hadlakas ner menorah.
Amazing idea.
So I once heard somebody, a world-class Talmid Chacham, I don't think he saw this piece inside. He asked, it's not true. It can't be, because he went to a museum, and in the museum it says they found menorahs from the second temple era. So you see, they did light.
Yeah, talking about 220 years.
Right? They're saying so we see they did light. So first of all, these archaeologists, the dates they give, I don't know if you could take it to the bank exactly when they lit. But even without that, he never saw this piece inside. I guarantee you, because Rabbi Shua Melakuna says like this: when the Beis Hamikdash stood, the Chazal were not mesakein to light the menorah, but people still did it. They weren't commanded to do it. They didn't have to do it. The Chachamim didn't say you have to do it, but people did it as a personal commemoration of the miracle. But it wasn't legislated yet. It's like, just because people put up happy Chanukah signs, it doesn't mean you have a chiyuv, you have a mitzvah to do it. That's just what people do. That's what the Rambam means, says Rabbi Shimon Kutna. The days of Chanukah were Yemei Simcha, days of Hallel, not Ula Hadlik. They never said you have to light. Umadlikin, they lit. That's just what people did. They lit. Later on, after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Chachamim were masakein to light the menorah as a chiyuv. So you might say, maybe this kind of D'Rabbanan is more lenient than other D'Rabbanans. Right? You might say, Purim was from the Nevi'im. Other mitzvahs are from the Nevi'im. So you might think that other Rabbanans, of course we know how important they are. But you would think Hadlakas Ner Menorah is more lenient. That's why the Rambam has to conclude that, by the way, nowadays, lighting the menorah in your house is a mitzvah D'Rabbanan, just like reading the Megillah, no less. Why would I think it's less? I'll tell you, I have very good reason why I would think it's less. I would think it's less because it was a later takana.
I have a suggestion. I don't know.
Yeah?
But we know that the Rambam writes his halachot to the time that it's going to be last forever.
Right.
And I guess when the Beit HaMikdash Shishi will build, maybe again you're not going to need to lit the menorah, the Chanukah. And some people will still light it. According to the logic that you explained before.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's the Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvahs.
Yeah.
That's the Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvahs.
When people lit the menorah on their own,
Yeah.
didn't someone say, hey, remember what happened to Aaron's two sons when they brought strange fire to the temple?
Oh, yeah. They were just doing it in their house. They were doing it in their house as a commemoration. It was an innocuous practice. I mean, why didn't we say this is a modern, innovative practice? How do you have a right to... It's just lighting a candle to commemorate a miracle.
It's like playing with fire.
Oh, very good. But, yeah, so that's the suggestion of Rav Shimon Kutna. Why does the Gemara not mention that the next year they established the Yom Tov for Hallel, Haidah, and lighting the menorah? The answer is because they didn't. They didn't establish the Yom Tov to light the menorah. Why doesn't it mention in Al Anisim they established the Yom Tov for Hallel, Haidah, and light the menorah? Because they didn't say to light the menorah. There's no need to say to light the menorah. If the whole purpose of lighting the menorah is to replicate what was happening in the Beis Hamikdash, well, if we're lighting in the Beis Hamikdash, we don't have to replicate it. And that was the consolation to Aaron, that the only avodah of the Beis Hamikdash that lasts forever is the Hadlakas HaMenorah. And with this, we could explain a few items. Okay, listen carefully. Let's say it's the night of Chanukah, and it's a little chilly. I'm trying to save money. It's 66 degrees. Yeah. And you want to warm yourself. So you're allowed to go next to the Ner Chanukah and start using it for your personal benefit? No. Asur lehishtamesh la'ira. You're not allowed to use it for, right? You're not allowed to use it.
If there are time, let's say after 30 minutes you can do that?
After 30 minutes? Yeah, but then you're not... It's better not to. But it'll make right in 30 minutes.
Is there a mitzvah for it to burn for 5 hours?
No, it's not a mitzvah. It's only that the longer it burns, you're yotzei more shitos when exactly the nighttime is. And
there's a very maderi, has a big Chanukah, and it's going to last for 5 hours.
One time I was walking in the neighborhood on 147th. I was coming to Shachris. When I first got married, it was like I was going davening 8 o'clock, and I had to pick up my tefillin from yeshiva. So I was walking by a certain Rav's house, It was like 7:45. His menorah was still burning. So I went to him. I said, "The new Chanukah miracle," you know.
So he's allowed to warm himself next to this menorah?
Not if you're doing it. If you're doing it for the mitzvah, no, you can't do it. But the halacha is you can't use the light. Why not? Let's say you're cold. You ought to put on a talis. Why are you now to use the Chanukah menorah for your own personal benefit? Well, Rashi says, because otherwise, if you're going to use it, people are not going to realize you lit it for Chanukah. The whole purpose of lighting the menorah is persumei nisa, to publicize the miracle. Well, if you're using it for your personal benefit, people are just going to think you're lighting a bonfire to keep warm. So therefore, by the way, the Beis Halevi writes, according to Rashi, if the only reason you're now to use it is because you want it to be recognizable, you lit it for a mitzvah, then you can't get benefit. But if I'm visiting your house, I could get benefit. If I'm cold, I could use it. If the whole reason is that I'm not allowed to use it so that it's recognizable that I lit it for a mitzvah, nobody thinks I lit it for my own personal benefit, so I can't use it, but someone else could use it. However, the Ran writes a different reason. The Ran number 7, the Ran writes, you're now to use it for anything. Why? Because since the miracle happened with the Menorah and the Beis HaMikdash, so therefore they gave your Menorah in your house the status of the Menorah and the Beis HaMikdash, that just like you can use the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, right? It would be Me'ilah, it would be Mayel Behektish, it would be misappropriating, it would be using Hektish, the same way you can use the Menorah in your house. So you say, what? What does the menorah in my house got to do with the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash? The menorah in the Beis HaMikdash was Kodshim. The menorah in my house, I bought the day before Chanukah. I bought it in the gift store. I got ripped off. What does it have to do with Kodshim, right? No. The answer is the purpose of lighting in your house. It's an extension, like we said, of the lighting in the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore we gave the menorah in your house the status of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Beis Halevi says, according to that, nobody could use the menorah. Not you and not your guest. Because we're giving, again, this is also bringing out the idea that your lighting at home is a continuation, is an extension of the lighting in the Beis HaMikdash.
The halacha, if somebody didn't light a candle, then he's going by a menorah, he can do a lot of things,
Yeah.
So based on that, you cannot, even the guest cannot do
But
it.
what's the ikr as far as the purpose? Is it presumines or is it zichron, like Yehoshua couldn't passing this?
Yeah, the purpose is to publicize the miracle, and the way we publicize it is by bringing a menorah into our own house. It's like we're extending them.
But the language in Yehoshua is very much remembering and commemorating.
Yeah, which line are you reading?
Number 6, just throughout.
Right. Yeah, the purpose is to remember and also to remind others. It's for ourselves.
So,
It's to remind others
I have one question on that.
of the miracle of the miracle that took place with the Menorah and the Beis HaMikdash.
Right.
And the way we remember that is by continuing it
But
into our own houses.
If that was continuing the Avodah, exactly matched one-to-one, then why we lit Chanukah with 8 candles? We should lit...
The answer is because there's a Isur.
Exactly.
You're now allowed to replicate the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay.
How come we're allowed to light with 7 then?
You're not.
No, I'm saying, but how come we can only have 7 nights? Well, it looks like 7 that night. 7.
What?
The 7th night.
Oh, the 7th night?
It looks like you're lighting 7.
Look carefully. Okay. Now the Ravid also says. The Ravid says another point that furthers our idea, and that is, we know when you lay in the Megillah, you make Al Mikra Megillah. Because a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, you say Al. Why? Because Al implies more discretionary than biblical. All the biblicals you do Lih. The Ravid says, but on Mikra Megillah, which is d'Rabbanan, is Al. So he asks, well, if the Rabbanans are all Al, so why don't you say Al Ner HaMenorah or Al Hadlakas HaMenorah? Menorah is also d'Rabbanan. Says the Ravid, no. Because since lighting the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash is Doraisa, so this, even though it's Rabbanan, but it's an extension of a Doraisa, and therefore you say Lih. So the Ravid clearly is saying this idea that our lighting of the Menorah is different than a regular Rabbanan. Regular Rabbanan, on Megillah you say Al Mikra Megillah. Why don't we say Al Hadlakas Ner Menorah? Because we're extending a mitzvah that originated Doraisa, and that is lighting the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash.
Is it Doraisa to light, or it's Doraisa to have it lit?
Where?
In the Beis Hamikdash.
It was a mitzvah deraisa to light it. To light it. Another halacha that fits very well into what we're saying, that the lighting of the menorah in your house is an extension of the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. And that is, the Torah brings down, when you light the menorah in the shul, where do you put the menorah?
The same way that you put in Beit HaMikdash.
What side?
Darom,
You put it in the south, the darom. Why the darom? Says the Torah, Ubebeis HaKnesses, in the shul, Manicha b'darom, you put the menorah in the south, Zecher le'menorah, as remembrance of menorah, Shahoisa b'darom, that was in the south. What does one guy do with the other? The menorah in the Beis Hamikdash was one mitzvah, and now there's a separate mitzvah to commemorate a miracle of the Maccabees, the Jewish resistance. No. The way the Chazal made the mitzvah was they were extending. They're saying that there's one avodah in the Beis Hamikdash shall last forever. And then one final offering, and that is, we know in Parshas Emor, it talks about all the Yomim Tovim. It talks about Pesach, Sfira, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and that's the end. Vaydaber Hashem. And after that, you would say, well, where's Chanukah? What do you mean, where's Chanukah? Chanukah is midrabanan. You're not going to find the Chumash. But right after that, it says, "V'yikchu elecha shemen zayisach." Take for you olive oil. And it says, "Rekeach." That's a remez to what? Chanukah. Say, how's that a remez to Chanukah? How is lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash a remez to Chanukah? What is the fact that they lit the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash? What does that got to do with Chanukah? According to what we're saying, it's very smooth, because our lighting of the menorah is a replica, is a copy, is an extension of the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. So let's just ask ourselves, think about it. Of all the avodas that they used to do in the Beis Hamikdash, we only have one left, right? We're not makter ketairas today, even though in a lot of Jewish homes they buy the scented candles and they put it, but still, that's still not ketairas. That's not the ketairas. And a lot of places, if women don't know how to cook, it's like a burnt offering, right? But it doesn't have a din of a mincha. The only avodah that we still have today is what? The menorah. Why is that? Why is it that of all the avodas, hundreds of avodas in the Beis Hamikdash, the only one, we don't bring a carbon tamid, we don't bring a carbon toida, we don't bring a chatas, not an asham. Why only halakas ha-menorah? So I think the reason is, because we say in Slichos, and we say it on Ne'ilah, we say, Ha'ir ha'kodesh v'hamachayzos, the holy city of Jerusalem, Ha'yu l'cherpa l'bizos, has been disgraced, has been embarrassed. V'chol machmadeh, all her treasures, tevuos ugenuzos, are buried and hidden. We don't have Kohen Gadol anymore, we don't have an Aron anymore, we don't have Ruach HaKodesh, we don't have the Choshen, everything is lost. We don't have Beis HaMikdash, we don't have a Kodesh, not a Kodesh HaKodashim, not a Mizbeach. The only thing we have, the Ein Shiur Rak HaTorah Hazos. The only thing the Jewish people have today is the Torah. Of all the great treasures that God once gave our people, Ruach HaKodesh, Nevuah, Urim B'tumim, there's only one thing we still have. The only thing we have is the Torah. The menorah represents the Chachma of the Torah. After all, we find throughout the Medrash, when somebody would say a good svara, a good argument, the compliment we would give him is kaftar v'ferach, buttons and knobs. Because the buttons and knobs represent Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral law. In fact, there were 50. What? Harotz lahachkim yadrim. Right? That's why people go to Miami. Harotz lahachkim yadrim. If you want to be smart, v'simonach menorah shabadarim. Right? What's the? So the menorah represents the Torah. So since the only thing we have left today is Torah Shabbat Peh, therefore the only avodah we could still have today is the menorah. So it's an amazing thing tonight. You go light your menorah. You have to think you're like the Kohen Gadol in the Beis Hamikdash, lighting the menorah, and you have to make sure your house then, to look around, make sure it's worthy to be a Beis Hamikdash, and it's a place of kedusha, and that to let in the light of the Shechina. I wish you all a freilich and Chanukah.
Why do you need a plate?
What?
Why do you need a plate?
Okay, thank you. And let's just add in. We could still add. We're still going. Now that explains why the inyan of having a nice menorah. It's not hidur mitzvah. It's since we saw that the menorah of Chanukah was enacted as a continuation of lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, so then you have to have a vessel, you have to have a kli. And that's why it should be nice. The same way the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash was beautiful. It was the most ornate and beautiful kli. So therefore, it's not because of Hiddur Mitzvah. For Hiddur Mitzvah, you don't have to beautify the thing that contains the thing that you do the mitzvah with. It's because it was enacted as an extension of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. And now, for real, I wish you a Freilich and Chanukah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.